All right, we're here at Smooches and Stabs. It's Jaime and Pepper, and today we have a really special topic. We're going to talk about how to save your marriage with Smooches and Stabs.
You've got to do the behind the scenes for that statement.
Well, there is a behind the scenes. We had a special listener contact us and let us know that she and her husband plan date night around our podcast. In fact, I've gotten a selfie from them in the car where they're hiding from children so they can listen to our podcast. I'm not sure Smooches and Stabs is really the best marital bonding, but we can go for it.
Maybe it's because Smooches and Stabs is kind of a combination of what real marriage is like. Smooches sometimes, and sometimes you have the need to stab something.
I think in some marriages we might need to reverse that. Stabs and smooches.
To make up for the stabs.
Speaking of stabs, also another reader texted me yesterday and she goes, "You need to write this." And it was an actual article clipping of a woman who was stabbed 32 times by her ex-boyfriend or whatever, and then went on to marry the paramedic who saved her life. I'm like, there's a lot of things I have to say about that. None of them are romantic. So
I'm really trying to find the romantic part in that right now. I'm trying to get through the stabbing part first. My brain is still stuck on that.
I think it's the concept of the hunky paramedic, right? But I'm like, man, she must have been hopped up on some serious medication. That poor thing. 32 stabs.
What a blessing that she survived.
Oh my gosh. No
maybe
kidding.
His CPR was worth it.
That revived me. Wow. Anyway, I'm glad that she has been so blessed, because that would have been, that's actually a real life situation and that would have been awful. Sure. But yeah, I was like, whoo, nope, not writing that one. That's just, I got nothing on that. That's gonna be good.
Okay, so I do have a question to start off with.
Yeah.
What is something in your writing in either the new book that's coming out? Don't tell us about the new book that's coming out if you don't want to, but what's something that you got to research in that book that you were like, whoa, this is really cool?
Oh, okay.
And this is the title of the book is
The Vanishing at Castle Moreau. I didn't know we were plugging our books on this show, Pepper.
No, I just want you to, because it's yes. I'm selfish. I want to share something I've learned because it does go with Smooches and Stabs.
Oh, so this is your segue into Jaime shares something so you don't feel guilty about sharing something about your own book.
Exactly.
Perfect. I like that. I can do that for you. I'm there for you. I'm there for you.
Thanks.
I'm totally there for you. So something that I researched. Oh gosh, is this going to be a spoiler? Could be a little bit of a spoiler. No, not necessarily. I researched the mechanisms of wheelchairs in the late 19th century.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How they would work.
How they work. And, because obviously ours today are extremely efficient.
Sure.
And back then, what were they made out of? Did they have padding in the seats? All those different things,
Were there brakes?
Were there brakes? I was just gonna say, yeah. So that was an interesting rabbit trail I did not expect to go down, but.
How interesting. I love when we get to do research and it's something interesting. So I'm working on the Juliet Code right now. Yes. And this is kind of like a combination of romantic and stabby. So I have been researching canes. Okay.
Mm-hmm. It's got a hidden weapon, doesn't it?
It has a sword inside.
Yes.
And this is my
For those of you who are listening in your car with your husband on date night, the YouTube version is actually showing you Pepper wielding a sword.
A cane sword. So I've been researching cane fighing. That's been fun. I've been researching because that was called gentleman's fighting in the early 1900s. Mm-hmm. And so I have had my cane sword for probably 8 years, and I've never researched cane fighting. So I was in my study watching YouTube videos on cane fighting, and I about destroyed several things in study because there are different kinds of ways you can swirl the cane around,
In other words, you weren't just watching cane fighting.
No, I was practicing my.
Yes.
And the handle is slippery. Just so you know.
Oops. That front window that we had put in with custom stained glass work.
Smooches and Stabs is happening in
got stabbed.
Right. So that was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. I like that. Yeah, I do like research. I've researched some gorier things though than wheelchairs. Oh, well, that sounded horrible. Wheelchairs are not gory. May I just say that was not the correlation I was trying to come up with?
Can I just say everyone knows you've probably researched gorier things than wheelchairs?
Wow. Apologies to anyone out there who has or will in the future utilize a wheelchair. Actually, the ones that I researched were like super classy. Like, dude, I'm like, if I ever have to have a wheelchair, I want an old-fashioned one because they are really classy. Yeah. Some of them had like the woodwork on these things were just insane. They were pieces of art. I'm like, that's nice. That's nice. And then it came to mind, that Little House on the Prairie episode where Laura pushes Nellie down the hill in the wheelchair. I don't know if you ever saw that.
Of course, that your mind would go there.
Oh, that's my favorite episode.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
here's nasty Nellie, and Laura just pushes her down the hill in the wheelchair, and Nellie's like, oh, okay. It has nothing to do with today's podcast.
Okay. I'm sure you'll find a way of turning your gore toward our podcast. So I'm not concerned about relating it.
I should say I have done nothing to prepare you for today's podcast.
Right. You guys need to know this. I don't even know what story she's brought. We when we find a story, we never know which one of us is going to find a really good story to bring to the podcast. And so she's found one and she hasn't prepared me at all. So this is all completely new to me.
Yeah, I've given you no warning, and
I'm terrified.
Well, actually, I did give you a warning. I said it's going to be hard pressed for you to bring romance into this one.
Well, that's not like that's a real warning. That's like, oh, great. That doesn't give me any ideas, no framework except great. It's going to be creepy, awful.
Okay, so this story takes place in the 1930s.
Okay.
Which, so instantly start summoning visions of mob prohibition,
yes,
all that fun stuff. Men in custom tailored suits with their slicked back hair and their Tommy guns. Yes, pinstripes, all that stuff. So on January 2nd, 1935, at 1:20 p.m. in Kansas City, a man who they didn't know, like, first of all, he's got a really, like, if you look up his picture, he could be 19, he could be 35. Like, he's one of those faces where
he's Paul Rudd.
Yes, thank you. That's exactly it. He's Paul Rudd. You just don't know how old the guy is. But he checked into the President Hotel in downtown Kansas City, and I'm just looking here for the time frame. I think it was 2 days later, they found him dead in his hotel room. Okay, and there's a huge story behind this, but it's known through history as the murder in room 1046.
Oh, that's fabulous. What a title for a book.
Right?
Your book, not mine.
It's never been solved. This is a murder that to this day has not been solved. Pepper's Googling. She's going right now.
I know. 1046?
1046. He checked in under the name Roland T. Owen.
Okay.
Which pretty quickly people figured out was an alias. All right. But his behavior was really weird. So he gets checked in, and he said that the hotels around him had outrageous prices. And so that's why he came to the President Hotel. They asked if he needed somebody to help him with his bags, to get his bags up to.
Okay, I'm sorry. His picture, you know who his picture reminds me of? Is it somebody from the Addams Family or from the other?
It's the boy from the Addams Family.
It is totally. Oh my gosh. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, that's okay. But yeah, so he stops, he checks in, and he doesn't need anything taken to his room. And So the bellboy, whose name was Randolph, basically, walks him to the room to show him where to go at this point in time, because there's no luggage to carry. And they get into the room, and Roland T. Owen basically unpacks his pockets. And all he has with him is a comb, a brush, and a toothbrush. So, I mean, at least he's got the hygienic thing going.
Sure.
Right. So, and then that afternoon, a maid was doing her housekeeping rounds and, knocks on the door. Nobody answers, knocks on the door. Nobody answers. So she goes inside. It's dimly lit. And Roland Owen is sitting inside. Right. And when she goes to leave, he asked her to leave the door unlocked because he was waiting for somebody. So she did. And the thing with the doors, I don't quite understand how the mechanisms worked in hotels back then, but it was one of those things like if you could lock the door from the outside, basically like if you had a kid and you want to leave them in the room, you could lock it from the outside and they could get out. Right.
So they're the old latch key kind of thing.
Yeah. Why? I don't know. It sounds like a recipe for murder right there. And it really was. Right. So he's like, don't lock the door. I've got somebody coming. And as she's getting ready to leave, the phone rings. He's talking to somebody on the phone. He calls this guy on the phone, Don, D-O-N, Don.
Okay.
And he says, no, Don, I don't want to eat. I'm not hungry. I just had breakfast. No, I'm not hungry. All right, whatever. So the next day, she goes back to give him fresh guest towels.
Right.
And she's outside the door. She hears two guys inside talking. Right.
Okay.
She knocks on the door. She says she's here to deliver towels. And the strange voice, which was not Roland's, this is a different guy now, answers, we don't need any. And she thought it was odd because she already knew that there weren't any clean towels in the room. Like they had already cleared out the clean towels. So she was coming back with fresh ones. And he's like, we don't need any. So then here's where it gets really weird. The next day, January 4th. So it's been 2 nights now, right?
Right.
The switchboard operator, because that's what they had back then, right? So you need to make a phone call, et cetera, et cetera. They have their boards that shows lights on them. So if you're on the phone, your light's on, it's busy, et cetera. She noticed that the light was on, which indicated the phone was off the hook. And
or was being used, right? The phone was being used.
Right. But it was on for a long time. So she asks the bellboy, who is the guy who originally showed Roland T. Owen to his room. She asks Randolph to go upstairs and just find out what's going on. He gets there. There's a do not disturb sign on the door. He knocks and a voice said, come in, but he couldn't get in because the door is locked. So here's a person telling him to come into the room, but I can't get in the room because the door's locked. So he shouts to the door and just says, hey, can you just hang up your phone because it's off the hook? An hour later, it's still off the hook. So they send a different bellboy and he uses his key to get into the room and he goes in and Owen is very much alive and he's laying on his bed in a particular state of undress. We'll just say that, right?
Yeah.
Right? So weird. The bellboy's like, okay, this is really weird. He puts the phone back on the hook and he goes out. So Roland T. Owens laying on the bed, not very responsive.
And they're sure it's
he's
Owen on the bed.
It's him on the bed. He's alive. He looks
like
he's
the Addams
breathing.
Family kid on the bed.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. He just isn't, really moving a whole lot to hang up the phone. So the bellboy's like, fine, I'll hang up the phone for you. And he left the room.
Okay.
Well, about 2 hours later, phone's off the hook again. So we go back to the original bellboy, Randolph. And he finally takes his key and he goes up into the room and he gets into the room and Roland T. Owen is on his elbows and knees holding his head. And the bellboy notices blood on his head, turns the light on and sees blood on the walls, the bed, in the bathroom. And Roland T. Owen is still alive. So the bellboy immediately screams for help. They come. They ask the injured man who had been in the room with him. The injured man says nobody and explains he fell on the tub. So he fell on the tub. And he's taken to the hospital. But there's
blood all over the walls.
There's blood on the walls. There's blood on the bed, in the bathroom. They get him to the hospital. and he dies. All right. He was found with his neck, ankles, and wrists tied, which is sort of weird, right?
Wait, he's holding his head with his wrists tied.
So, like that probably, where his wrists are tied, he's leaning his head on his wrists. He had multiple stab wounds, a punctured lung. There were bruises on his neck that suggest he'd been strangled. And all of this, the doctor assumed or concluded that happened about 6 to 7 hours before he was discovered, right about the time his phone went off the hook. But Owen claimed no one was in the room with him. There were no weapons in the room. And the only other fingerprints in the room belonged to a female. Figure that one out. There's your hook.
I have an idea.
I don't know what to do with the female because nobody ever saw a girl in the room. And they thought maybe it was suicide or something like that. They found out
in the room.
Well, yeah, but it wasn't matched to the maid. That's the creepy thing, right? So here's where it gets really, really weird.
Okay, even weirder. You mean it's even not weird enough?
You think this is weird? It's not weird enough yet. So they discover pretty quickly that's his name isn't Roland T. Owen, that it's a pseudonym. But they can't figure out who his real name is. They don't know his identity. They run the case in the newspapers. People show up, wanting to know who this guy is. A couple months pass, the case goes cold. It was told in the paper that because they didn't know who he was, he's getting buried in a pauper's grave. But the funeral home receives a call from an unknown person who requests that the man not be buried, that the funds would be sent for a proper funeral service. And then a few weeks later, not only did they receive the funds to cover the funeral, but they received it with a card that said, "Love forever, Louise."
This is fantastic.
Now, there's still a whole bunch more to this story, but that's the gist of what happened. There's thoughts that his real name is Artemis Ogletree. There was a woman a year later who saw the picture of the supposed Roland T. Owen and thought it might be her brother who had basically left home and they hadn't heard from. And there was a whole bunch of weird things because after this Roland T. Owen died, who was supposedly this Artemis Ogletree, their family started getting typewritten letters by Roland or Artemis, and he didn't know how to type, but it was from his perspective. And it made it sound like he was traveling in Chicago and Europe and New York. And to this day, they've pretty much assumed and pretty much concluded that he is Artemis Ogletree, but nobody knows what happened and why his family got letters.
The dead person
is Artemis Ogletree.
But the letters came after he died.
The letters came after he died. So one, nobody knows why his family got letters after he died. Two, no one knows who the strange man named Don was on the phone or the strange man in his room. Three,
who could have been Don.
Right. The woman's fingerprints in the room were never identified, and nobody knows who paid for the funeral and who this Louise is. And so at this point in time, that's pretty much all we know about the mystery of room.
And it says here's this interesting part that you mentioned about after they took him to the hospital. Everything was missing from the room. Soap, shampoo, towels were all missing. Even stranger, all of Owen's clothes were gone. No coat, shirt, pants, socks, or even shoes. Everything was gone. The only thing in the room were 2 empty glasses, an unlit cigarette, a hairpin, a safety pin, and a bottle of diluted sulfuric acid. One of the empty water glasses laid in the sink with a broken piece of glass missing, and the other had 4 fingerprints, possibly belonging to a woman.
Right. And the other weird part about this is the way the door was locked. I don't quite understand it, but like it was locked in such a way where he would have been locked in the room. Like it was locked from the outside. So his story that he fell against the tub didn't even make sense, because how would have he gone outside his room, locked the door, and gotten back in? He couldn't
So the
have.
bathroom was outside the room?
No, the bathroom was in his room, but the door to his hotel room was locked from the outside, and he was inside. So
Right.
somebody had to lock him in the room.
Right. Which brings me back to this maid. Okay. I'm curious who she was. If she knew he was going to be there and they had a romantic relationship. So she made sure to be the one that was taking care of him in his room. And perhaps, now, you could bring in all the gangster thing, but it could be something as simple as, if we're going to go with tragic romantic, it could be something as logical as the fact that she was married, and the husband has found out, and there's this guilt part of Roland Ogletree guy who has realized he's made a mistake and he's breaking up a marriage, and the wife and the husband work it out to get rid of him, and no one ever knows what happened.
That's a possibility.
Or she is part of some underground something. I really like the idea of her being kind of, she's there for a reason. She's not just some make-believe maid. She planned this. And if you're working with gangsters, you can you plant people in places. So she's maybe been planted there. Maybe this guy knows a lot of information. Dawn is a great gangster name. And so he showed up. She's the one who found out where this guy was, told Dawn. Yeah. Dawn shows up. Dawn is trying to get information from Roland. And
I mean, it's possible.
Because it would be very gangstery to get rid of everything and leave it as a mystery so you don't know what's happened. The only thing I don't understand is that he's still alive. A gangster probably wouldn't do that. If they're going to do a job, they're going to finish the job.
Of course, if he was, stabbed multiple times, punctured a lung, and had been strangled, they might have, maybe he passed out and they thought he was dead. That's true. It is 1935. It's not like everybody back then understood all the vitals to check and things to make sure.
Right. And if he says nobody's in there, it's very matches the idea that they're holding something against him, that he can't share the information of who's in there.
Right.
I still don't understand why they would take all the towels and everything. Unless they were trying to clean up something they cleaned up something with the towels and they took them with them. She is a maid. She can hide all the towels.
Yes. Her name was Mary Soptic.
Is it really though? We've got a lot of assumed names here.
I know. Maybe she really was Louise.
Maybe she really was Louise.
But then why did she go along with her husband to kill this guy and then go out on and pay for his funeral and say love always, Louise, or love forever?
If there was a love triangle, she could have felt guilty, and she was trying to make up for that, because maybe she really did love the Ogletree guy, but she's under the thumb of her husband, and she ended up
true.
There's true. That I'm bringing romance, lady. And so I'm trying.
She's trying really, really hard to redeem this story.
I don't know if there's a redemption theme here, but I am trying to bring romance. But it would make sense if let's say Mary Louise is part of this larger gangster thing. So she's caught in it.
True.
But she really is in love with the Ogletree guy. And then her husband or boyfriend, the gangster guy, finds out about this whole situation, and the Ogletree guy knows some kind of information that puts him at risk. Then it would easily be something where the gangster guys come in, they get rid of him, pop. She knows that they've done it, but there's nothing she could do to stop it. And so she covers their tracks to protect the gangster people.
This is true.
And then sends money in later because her heart is so broken by the loss of her true love that she wants to somehow make his death a much better than a pauper's grave. That's the least she could do. That's the least she could do.
You know, there's something to say about what you're theorizing here, because I just found out here too. So the cash that came to the funeral home, it was wrapped in newspaper. So there's like no identification at all.
Right.
And then
what's even better?
The local florist that delivered the flowers, do you want to know what the flowers were? 13, unlucky 13, American Beauty roses, which are like the premium red love forever roses, but there's 13 of them. Like, there's something sadistic about, I know you want to make this romantic, but there's almost something sadistic about that. Like, I love you forever, but I'm also a psychopath female. And here's 13 to remind you. It's like she's the Black Widow.
Maybe Mary Louise is the one. Maybe all these times where men's bodies have been found without knowing the killer, it's always been her. She is the one that goes in and does stuff like that.
Well, if there's a pattern. Dude, a woman even called the local newspaper to argue with them. When they reported that he was going to be buried in a pauper's grave, she called the editor and said, "You have a story in your paper that's wrong. Roland Owen will not be buried in a pauper's grave. Arrangements have been made for his funeral." And the editor like pushed back, like, "Okay, well, what happened to him? Do you know what happened to him?" And she goes, "He got into a jam."
That goes along with my theory. I'm just saying.
Oh my gosh, how creepy.
Okay, but this would also work. Okay, so this could work your way, where she's psycho.
Oh, so psycho. Yeah.
Or it could work my way, where she's a victim.
I like the psycho angle.
I know, of course you like the psycho angle, you stabber.
You smoocher.
I am. They meet, she's trying to convince him to get out of town, and he's like, "But I am in love with you and I've got to meet this guy to give information." And she's like, "No, stay, you're in danger." And in comes the other romantic. This is why I don't like, I don't like triangles. And so, look at what trouble triangles cause love triangles
cause. Smooches and stabs. I mean, it's you know, we are kind of the ultimate.
A triangle's even shaped like a dagger.
It is, right? It like goes right through your heart and pierces it. I don't know. There's something about this story that totally intrigues me, though. You know, like the other thing that they found out when they identified him as Artemis Ogletree, which, by the way, coolest name ever.
Truly.
He was 19.
He was?
Mm-hmm. This is not an old middle-aged man. Even though he could have passed for 35. I think he totally, looking at his picture, he could totally have passed for 35. But he was 19 years old. And the other part to this story that still kind of throws off the romantic angle is the fact that his family kept getting letters after he died.
I was going to bring that up. That's kind of, but if we go with your psychopath, that would work fantastically.
Yeah.
Because a psychopath is that. They're crazy. And they're going to do things like send letters typed by Artemis.
Yeah, and that's possible. It is possible. There was somebody named Jordan who actually called Artemis's mother after Artemis was dead. And actually talked to her. So it was one of those things where the timeline goes, Artemis is dead, but mother hasn't figured it out yet. Like, they don't know where he is. So they haven't seen the newspaper article.
Right.
In that span of time, some dude named Jordan calls Artemis's mother and claims to be Artemis's old friend. And I just happen to be in the States. Artemis is overseas. It's gonna be a while before he can be home. He just wanted me to tell you hi, etc., etc. And she asked him some more questions, and then he hung up.
It sounds like Artemis was quite in a jam. If it really is Artemis.
Well, and that's a question. See, here's my theory.
All right, go.
It's very simple. The guy who was killed in room 1046 not only was not Roland T. Owen, but he also was not Artemis Ogletree. I think his family thinks he's Artemis Ogletree, and there's a whole science behind how they identified him, which I won't get into for the sake of time. But the family, and even the officials, everybody believes very sincerely that he has been identified as Artemis Ogletree. But I think Artemis Ogletree was involved in some really nasty, nasty business. And they found this dude that literally had no family. Like, I don't want to say a homeless person, but just somebody who, a hobo at the time, somebody who's like hopping trains that could pass as Artemis. And they staged this whole thing so that Artemis could disappear. And those letters, those typewritten letters and that random phone call, really, if you think about it, if you're trying to disappear and make your murder the focal point, you do weird things like that. Because nobody's looking for you. They're trying to solve your murder, which gets weirder and more twisted and makes less sense the deeper you go. And so they knew that this murder mystery that they had concocted would, people would be so infatuated with it that he could just go overseas and create an entirely new identity and new life.
That's a great one, but that inspires another idea from me.
Okay.
What if we're in between World War I and World War II. What if he's a spy?
Oh.
What if he's a spy and they're trying to protect him? So they do the whole find the wanderer, use his body as a cover. Mary Louise is another spy who's trying to get him out because he's going to be killed. So they work out everything. He does go to the other country. She meets him over there. They're happily ever after, whatever. But would that not be amazing? And so it's in between the two. So the letters would work still. And to keep people aware that he's somewhere, or whatever, but or he even may send them to say, Mom, Dad, you need to know I'm okay. I just can't tell you anything else.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. We solved
this.
We have solved the murder in room 1046. How easy was that? It took us all of a half an hour, and people have been messing with this since 1935.
That's right. They just needed our brains with our particular giftedness.
Well, this is why you pair people who don't think the same, because you come up with the answers.
I love it.
It's so obvious. It's so obvious.
Clearly, we're between two wars. The spies started in World War II. Women spies, particularly, they started the network of women spies in World War I. Which transferred over into World War II. So I'm curious.
Well, and really, he would have made the perfect spy because, frankly, how he looked. He could have passed. Like, I'm looking at his picture right now.
Yeah.
Besides the age issue, he could pass as Italian. He could pass as German. He could pass as English. He's really got one of that. He's just a dark-featured man.
Yep.
Deep set eyes, dark hair. He could pass as an Addams Family member.
Is he the guy that you talked about recently who was timeless?
Oh, Saint Germain?
Yeah.
Maybe he was Saint Germain. I mean, at this point, with what we come up with, he's probably the prince of, what's that place under the sea that you keep thinking exists?
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry, I can't. Atlantis.
I kept wanting to say the Prince of Artemis. I'm like, no, that's the name of the dead guy.
Well, and it would work well for his. I mean, they could have just gotten a regular guy. Torturing a regular guy doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. But if they were wanting to make it, like you said, a distraction, then you would do things to make it a distraction, like torture, tie up, have blood in different places. And then,
I mean, it's how I would kill someone.
That is so comforting to know.
I mean, you got to make the crime scene interesting enough to really send people down a bunch of rabbit trails so you have time to do something else with your life.
And if he was a spy and they were trying to set a scene, then they would stage it. It would be staged.
Yeah.
So leaving stuff like an unlit cigarette, a hairpin, and a safety pin, and a bottle of sulfuric acid.
They probably played a game of Clue before they went and killed this guy.
Right,
and then we're like, oh, let's leave a few random things. He was killed in the hotel room with a hairpin.
That's right. You can kill with a hairpin if you hit the right place.
Well, you can. I've studied it.
Me too. Oh my gosh, we both studied it.
It's a bonding moment. Maybe Smooches and Stabs can help with relationships after all. You know, you can also kill somebody with a lot of different office products. Paper clips. Paper clips are extremely effective. I can tell you how, but I won't.
That's okay. I learned you can save a life with the tube of the inside of a pen.
Yes, you can. The tracheotomy.
Mm-hmm. See, I'm on the saving the life side. You're on. Although I did research how to kill somebody with a hat pin.
Well, you can. Hat pins are nasty. Those things are long, and they're like basically miniature swords. Yeah,
they are. They're fantastic.
Yeah, my mom has an antique hat pin holder. Like it's porcelain china, and it's got beautiful little roses painted on it, and it's got holes in the top, and she actually has antique hat pins in it. It's like what you would have, how you kept your hat pins back.
Okay, you need to bring a hat pin to the next.
I will.
Smooches and Stabs, because I think we all should. For those who watch on YouTube, they need to see the real hat pin, because when we think hat pins nowadays, we think of these little bitty things.
Oh yeah, no, this is like a miniature sword.
Well, they had massive hats. You had to have something that was going to make it all the way through the hat to your head. And
sometimes you had to double them up.
Yep.
You need more than one hat pin.
I think it's a fantastic tool for a spy.
Yeah. It's quite the dagger for a dame.
I agree. If I was
the dame dagger. The dame dagger. All right.
Mary Louise, let's watch out.
So I think we have the theme for Pepper's next mystery novel. Set in 1935 with Mary Louise and her hairpin.
I don't know that.
Entitled The Dame Dagger.
The Dame Dagger. Now, I think that's
very Agatha Christie. It's very Agatha Christie.
The wrapped up tortured guy is maybe not so much Agatha Christie and more Jamie Jo Wright. But
if Agatha Christie and Stephen King had a baby, this would be their story.
Oh my word, what a baby.
And then Artemis Ogletree comes back dressed as a clown. Dun dun dun. All right, we've reached the limit of this story. I'm not sure there's much more we can do with it. I think it's romantic. I think it's suspenseful. It's I mean, we even tied in, Atlantis just for you.
Just for me. Yes, just for me.
Just for you.
Time travel with your undead guy.
Yeah. But I do have a thing for random hotel mysteries. I think I'm gonna need to write one, because there's another story that we won't use. It's a little bit, I don't want to say it's similar, but it's in the 1990s where this young girl goes to a hotel in LA or San Francisco. I don't know. Strange things happen in California. Let's just say that. And like they have footage of her getting on an elevator, and then the door stops and she kind of looks out into the hallway both ways, like she's hiding, and then she ducks back into the elevator and the doors close, and that's the last she was ever seen.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah. She's just another one.
She's a time traveler.
Oh, probably.
It's like the what is it called? The TARDIS? The elevator was really just
it's the Doctor Who TARDIS. She's Doctor Who. Oh, that was easy. I'm not fascinated with that one anymore. She's Doctor Who. It makes sense. And moving on to the next mystery. All right. So next time we get together, we will have another mystery for you, or another story, or something else from history that we decide we want to, romanticize or turn into a blood-curdling tale.
Right. We may rework a classic even.
Oh,
at some point.
Something in your mind.
Well, maybe. reworking some classics might be fun sometime.
Reworking classics could be fun.
I want our listeners to send in ideas of classics that they would like us to either gore up, as Jaime can do, or romance up in some kind of way.
Yeah.
So that would be fun. We could try a few of those and see how people like that. Because we're gonna keep looking for mysteries. That's something we'll keep doing.
Right.
Or unsolved somethings.
Unsolved stories.
Yeah. Yep. But please send in some classics that you would like to see if we can smudge the lines a little with those.
Yeah. And then, as they say on all podcasts, please like, share, and subscribe.
Yes.
Tell everybody about Smooches and Stabs.
Right.
Share us on Facebook
Especially
and Instagram.
Your spouse, so you can have a date night with us.
Yes. Maybe someday we'll do a giveaway, a Smooches and Stabs date night giveaway package.
That's great. One for him and one for her.
Give her a hairpin and him a dagger. See what happens.
We got to do something romantic.
With a box of chocolates.
Yes, with the box of chocolates or the red roses, 13.
I'm not sure if I got anything in the mail from Smooches and Stabs that I would open it. I think I'd just be like, yeah, Pepper and Jaime. Nope. It's going to garbage. Deep six that baby.
You guys, you can trust me. I'll send something sweet.
You guys can trust me because I won't send anything. So there, we're good. Perfect. All right. Well, thanks for joining us with Smooches and Stabs. This was an enlightening episode. And send us ideas of classics you want us to remake. And we could do that.